Oh yeah!
Math grammar.
Baby!
Let's talk about semicolons. What is a semicolon? Well, it's a punctuation mark that looks like this. A semicolon is not a colon. Take a look at the difference. The semicolon has a dot on the top and a comma on the bottom. The colon has two dots. The semicolon means to take a pause. The pause of the semicolon is a little bit longer than a comma, but not a complete halt or a full stop like the period indicates. Check out this sentence with a semicolon. The 10 Commandments are solid moral rules for life. Everyone should follow them. Notice where the semicolon is. It shows a pause. It's a brief pause because it's all one sentence. Now that we've looked at that one example, let's talk about the 3 semicolon opportunities. You can use the semicolon between 2 independent clauses that are closely related in thought. You can also use the semicolon between 2 independent clauses that are joined by an adverbial conjunction. It's also known as a conjunctive adverb. And finally, you should use a semicolon in a 2-part series. Since I used the term independent clause in 2 of the rules, it's important for you to know what an independent clause is. An independent clause is a group of words that work together and has a subject, has a verb that works with that subject, and conveys a complete thought. Take a look at my 3 sentences here. God rescued Israel from Egypt. God met Moses at Mount Sinai. God gave Moses the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai. An independent clause and a complete sentence are the same thing. Let me show you. All 3 sentences indicate or convey a complete thought. And notice that all 3 sentences have a subject and a verb. God rescued, God met, God gave. As I mentioned, an independent clause and a complete sentence are pretty much the same. Let's begin with our first opportunity to use semicolon between 2 independent clauses that are closely related in thought. I see plus semicolon plus I see. Take a look at this sentence. I studied for the test. I earned an A. Notice that there is a semicolon between the 2 independent clauses. These ideas are closely related. If you study for the test, hopefully you'll earn an A. Makes sense? Now take a look at this sentence. I did not study for the test. I earned an A. These 2 ideas are not closely related in thought. Usually, if you don't study for a test, you're not expected to earn an A, but congratulations if you did earn that A. Let's take a look at the semicolon being used in the 10th commandment. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. Think about this for a minute. Technically, you can break the sentence in half at the semicolon, and both halves of the sentence can live by themselves. The first half is, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. Now look at the second half of this sentence. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. Now, first and foremost, you should recognize that this part of the sentence can stand by itself. It does contain an independent clause, but I will admit it also has a dependent clause in there. The most important thing to recognize is that both halves of this sentence can stand by themselves. The semicolon is placed between 2 independent clauses. Each part of this sentence can stand by itself. Now let's look at using the semicolon between two independent clauses joined by an adverbial conjunction. This rule is IC plus semicolon plus adverbial conjunction plus comma plus IC. Before we go any further, let's take a look at some common adverbial conjunctions. And by the way, another term for adverbial conjunction is conjunctive adverb. Accordingly, additionally, briefly, in short, comparatively, consequently, for example, for instance, furthermore, hence, however, in addition, in conclusion, in summary, finally, instead, moreover, namely, nonetheless, rather, then, therefore, thus. Now this list isn't exhaustive. All of the adverbial conjunctions are not listed, but you should get the gist of them. The idea in this sentence should look familiar. We had it in our previous rule. I did not study for the test. However, I earned an A. Notice that the word however, that adverbial conjunction, helps to bring these two ideas that are not closely related, helps to bring these ideas together. That's what the adverbial conjunction helps to do, makes a transition. Take a look at how the semicolon is being used. You have the semicolon, the adverbial conjunction, and then the comma. These three things work together between the two independent clauses. And here's another sentence with two independent clauses with the semicolon, adverbial conjunction, and the comma. Through the years, Israel experienced the presence of God in powerful ways. For example, God revealed himself at Mount Sinai in a thick cloud and in fire. Remember that with the semicolon between two independent clauses, you can break the sentence in half at the semicolon, and both parts can live by themselves, make sense by themselves. So look at this sentence again. Through the years, Israel experienced the presence of God in powerful ways. Then, God revealed himself at Mount Sinai in a thick cloud and in fire. It could be two separate sentences, but this writer wants this sentence to be one full sentence with that semicolon, conjunctive adverb, and comma. Let's look at using the semicolon, conjunctive adverb, comma between the first and second commandments. When you look at these two commandments in the Bible, they are not written as one sentence. We're just using this as an example so that you can see how the semicolon, conjunctive adverb, comma work together to bring ideas into one sentence. Take a look at this. You shall have no other gods before me. Furthermore, you shall not make for yourself a carved image and bow down to it. Once again, technically speaking, this sentence could be expressed in two separate sentences. Take a look. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image and bow down to it. This is really how it's expressed in the Bible. But we've placed the semicolon, conjunctive adverb, comma to bring these two ideas together in one sentence. The first two instances to use the semicolon, they're really optional. You could punctuate those sentences in other ways. However, the two-part series is a little bit different. You have to use the semicolon with this particular instance. In order for this rule to make sense, let's start with an example sentence. There are many heroes in the Bible. Noah, an ark. Moses, Israel. David, Goliath. Solomon, the first temple. Nehemiah, the wall. Paul, the Gentiles. This sentence has a series, and each element in the series has two parts. What is the series? The series is heroes. And what are the two parts in each element? The name of the hero and the item or the person or persons with which that hero is associated. Take a look. Noah built an ark. Moses led the people. David defeated Goliath. Solomon built the temple. Nehemiah rebuilt the wall. And Paul preached the gospel to the Gentiles. The semicolon is being used to separate each of the elements in the two-part series. Now, if you notice, within each of the elements, there is a comma. The comma in each of the elements is being used to separate the person and the item with which, or the persons with which, the individual is associated. Noah, comma, built an ark. Moses, comma, led the people. David, comma, defeated Goliath. If it was all commas, oh my goodness, it would be so confusing. Now there's one more punctuation mark that I'm sure that you see in this sentence, and that is the colon. The colon is different from the semicolon. The colon is here because it is introducing what we call a lengthy series. That's for another video. Let's try this again, using the semicolon to separate parts in a two-part series. The Bible shares stories about significant women. Sarah, Israel's matriarch. Miriam, prophetess and Moses' sister. Deborah, judge. Huldah, prophetess. Esther, queen. Mary, Christ's mother. Mary Magdalene, Christ follower and first witness of his resurrection. What's in this series? It's a series of women. And what are the two parts of each of the elements in the series? The woman's name and her title or accomplishment. Let's look at our series again. We have Sarah, Israel's matriarch. Miriam, prophetess and Moses' sister. Deborah, judge. Huldah, prophetess. Esther, mediator queen. Mary, Christ's mother. Mary Magdalene, Christ follower and first witness of his resurrection. Now don't forget that this punctuation mark is a colon. Let's practice. Here's a friendly reminder about the 3 instances to use semicolon. You can use the semicolon between 2 independent clauses that are closely related in thought. You can also use the semicolon between 2 independent clauses that are joined by an adverbial conjunction. It's also known as a conjunctive adverb. And finally, you should use a semicolon in a 2-part series. Now here we go. Is the semicolon in this sentence used correctly? Actually, no, and the reason is the word for, F-O-R. That word is a coordinate conjunction, and it cannot be used with a semicolon here. Where should you place the semicolon in this sentence? If you said to place it right after 6 days, you're right, the semicolon should go there. Good job! How about this sentence? Where should you place the semicolon? That's right, place it after father. Good work. Is the semicolon in this sentence used correctly? No, the semicolon is not used correctly in this sentence. Remember that a test that you can use to determine if you're using your semicolon correctly is to break the sentence in half where the semicolon is. If each half of the sentence can live by itself, live independently, then you're using your semicolon correctly. Hopefully, of course, if the ideas are closely related, if you're abiding by the rules that we've talked about. In this instance, let's try that out. When you honor your father and your mother, that part of the sentence cannot live alone. It's not an independent clause, so you cannot use a semicolon after it. Where should you place the semicolon in this sentence? Exactly. You got it right. Let's try this a different way. Should you place a semicolon in this sentence? No, you should not. This is only one independent clause. Good work. Okay, one more try. This sentence has 3 semicolons. Tell me, what rule or rules justifies each semicolon? This first semicolon is here because we have 2 independent clauses joined by a conjunctive adverb. However, these last 2 semicolons are separating items in a 2-part series. We have the name and their profession. And of course, don't forget, this punctuation mark is a colon. If you made it this far in our video, you've learned a lot about the semicolon. Yay! Here are the 3 rules for the semicolon one more time. Separate 2 independent clauses that are closely related in thought. Separate 2 independent clauses that are joined by a conjunctive adverb. Separate items in a 2-part series. And just one more thing. Did you notice that we used the 10 Commandments as our examples? Let's revisit them one more time. Do not worship any gods other than the true God. Do not make and worship any idols. Do not use God's name in vain. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not lie. Do not covet. Now you have another tool in your writing arsenal to have that refined writing. Take care.